Guam is getting hit pretty hard with a pretty powerful typhoon, and I think it's kind of interesting because Guam is one of the target locations that the MIC has chosen to do a lot of proving, so to speak, where it's a target location for setting up scenarios. And one scenario in particular that they have discussed for a good long time is using that area to test EMPs. So I find it really curious. On the AccuWeather radar, I took some screenshots, and clearly it looks to me like it's being influenced. And now this is the current radar of it right here. You can see there's the time. And in the screenshots of what was popping off earlier, there was some interesting bands showing up. Some very uniform bands and circles popping up right over in here. And just not natural. This is not natural, folks. This was created and this was unleashed. And what's kind of interesting is that this is actually up by where the Marianas Trench is and everything too. And there's a lot of interesting mystery surrounding the Marianas Trench and what that entails. And I have my own theories about that, none of which I'm willing to share right now at this particular time. But there's a reason why they chose this location to test a lot of different things. And I find it very, very curious that shortly after this started popping off and really lighting up over here, our internet went out. And, you know, typically we'll have like slow internet days, but it very rarely will go out here. It stays pretty well on. I'm going to back out here so you can kind of see in location-wise. Right there is the U.S., and then over here you have the Hawaiian Islands, and then over here you have Guam. Over here you have Taiwan and Japan, Philippines, Papua New Guinea. So this area out here, they've done a lot of testing. A lot of testing, folks. And like I said, because I'm repetitive, I gotta say it again. This was one of the areas that they chose as a target location to test their EMP scenarios and stuff too. And this rotation, and this is very curious. I've seen it before, but a lot of this going on here is just not natural. This is created. This is a created typhoon. And if we know from our own records that have been published, that shows the effects of detonating certain things can have. They can generate hurricanes, they can generate typhoons, they can create these things. If this was created, folks, enough is enough. I mean, it's beyond anything that that anybody could really imagine, and how deep and wide this whole thing with weather modification and weather manipulation has gone. And they've taken the liberty, and they've gotten away with too much for far too long. Now, you also need to understand that because of a lot of their a lot of their scenarios and scenes that they've created over here in Guam, it's not really a very heavily populated area with civilians, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of people that work for the governments that hang out and monitor things, so to speak. So it's not like this is one of those things where it's going to have a really hard impact on a whole great number of people, because the majority of people that are there and inhabiting that area are involved with all of the creation of these things. It says here, the typhoon is forecast to impact Guam and the Mariana Islands Tuesday night or early Wednesday as a Category 4 storm, according to AccuWeather. The north-northwest track is expected to continue over the next day or two, with additional strengthening likely. Okay, and here you go. You got FEMA. FEMA announced Tuesday that President Joe Biden approved federal disaster assistance for the territory of Guam to supplement territorial and local response efforts due to emergency conditions resulting from Typhoon Mawar. Remember, this is not a very heavily populated area due to the fact that they have been slammed with many, many storms in the past. Don't get the impression that there are going to be tens of thousands of refugees and people in trouble here that need our money. No. The people that inhabit this little island and inhabit Guam and the surrounding areas are governmental people. It's just sad to me. It's really sad to me how much they've been allowed to get away with, and people just don't want to believe that they can create things like this and do things like this. But not only do I believe it, but there's plenty of documentation and public reports from their own agencies, admittedly, that they do things like this. This was generated, this was created by man, not natural. And it's just beyond me how they've been able to get away with it for so long. People really need to wake the hell up. For real. Yeah, I'll put some of those screenshots here at the end of this video. Hopefully, if it'll let me upload it to the computer, and I can show you the radar signals where they were beaming and creating this system that is just pretty much enveloped Guam. And y'all, they've got hard lines out here, folks. That's one thing y'all gotta remember. There are hard lines, underground cables that span all across this whole area here and span across. And they have been wanting to test, specifically EMP, and whether or not that cable structure can uphold it. And I call it the hard lines. And right now they've got a whole bunch of people all convinced to go over to this Wi-Fi thing and to go over to the vulnerable communication lines. And that's pretty much what they're doing, folks. In case y'all haven't really realized it and figured it out, the governmental bodies and the agencies, they're not going green. They're not going solar. They're not going all electric. They're not going off the grid type of thing. They're not going all Wi-Fi and depending on the satellite systems. They're making sure that all of the governmental bodies are all situated on the hard lines, and they want the civvies off the hard lines. So they've got a whole bunch of people convinced that these satellite phones and these satellite communication systems are what's best, and they're going to get all of the civvies off of the hard lines, and then they're going to pop their shit off, and their stuff is going to be protected and safe because they're going to be on the cables, they're going to be on the hard lines, and it's going to be the civvies that are going to drop their communication lines. You see, they couldn't very well have popped off one of their bigger scenarios at a time when there were governmental agencies and critical, essential installations relying on Wi-Fi and the satellite systems, because they know damn well that when they pop that off, all of those satellite systems are going down. Anything in the atmosphere is going to go down, and it's not going to be able to be used for communication, and they know it. That's why there's a big focus to make sure that all of the governmental agencies and all of the emergency responding agencies and all of the essential critical installations are on the hard lines, and the civvies are not. They don't want you on the hard lines. They want you on the Wi-Fis. They want you on that vulnerable, unprotected communication line so that when they pop it off, they stay online. They're able to communicate, but we are not. And that's the bigger picture, folks. So if you still have a landline and you still have an internet connection through a landline, you better hang on to it. You better hang on to it, because it's going to be the only thing that's going to survive when they pop off what they're really planning to pop off. Yep. Nothing to see here, folks. Okay, so this is what I was talking about as far as their EMP test goes. And this was from InfraGard Electromagnetic Pulse Special Interest Group, EMP-SIG, and they even got a trademark on it. How special is that? DuPont Summit, 1 December 2017. It says here, note, briefing does not represent a coordinated DHS position. Yeah, they always say that, don't they? This is a file here on EMP resilience. They talk about electromagnetic pulse background. Over the past several decades, EMP threat has grown. North Korea tested H-bomb, claimed a super powerful EMP capability. North Korea successfully demonstrated the Hwasong 15 ICBM. Today's power grid and information networks are much more vulnerable to EMP than those of a few decades ago. We take seriously the U.S. EMP Commission's recommendation that DHS play a leading role in spreading knowledge of the nature of prudent mitigation preparations for EMP attack to mitigate its consequences. Presidential Policy Directive 21, Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall provide strategic guidance, promote a national unity of effort, and coordinate the overall federal effort to promote the security and resilience of the nation's critical infrastructure. And that includes making sure that they have all of their stuff shielded and protected on the hard lines, not vulnerable to the Wi-Fi's and the satellites and all of that that's going to go down. And they talk about EMP lessons from Soviet history. See, they learned all of this stuff on how to harden our critical infrastructures. And then when they went all Wi-Fi with stuff, and they started spreading around that 5G stuff, they realized that that leaves them in a vulnerable position. But they want all of us in the cities on the Wi-Fi's, while they get themselves on the hard lines, protected and shielded. And that's exactly what they've been doing. In this guide here, they give guidance. Oh, this is one over the U.S. here, where they talk about for various nuclear weapon height of bursts. There's your North Korean missile threats against Guam. North Korean threatened test over the Pacific. It's always someone else, isn't it? Here's your Guam undersea cable infrastructure risk. Most of Guam's phone and internet service is made possible by undersea cables. That's why I said I thought it was very curious that Guam got hit and our internet went out here in Nevada. I don't know. It's quite a coincidence. These cables are vulnerable to being cut and to EMP attacks. High-frequency E1 EMP can disrupt cable landing stations. Low-frequency E3 EMP can disrupt undersea repeaters and equipment. So you see they have this cable system that has proven to be, protected. That's why they have it coded. That's why they have it all buried. They have it installed the way that they do. This cabling system, the hard lines, it's throughout our entire planet, folks. Low Earth orbit, satellite risks, high altitude nuclear bursts. Yeah. Sudden loss of most, if not all, LEO commercial satellites would seriously impact U.S. national security. Low Earth orbit intelligence gathering assets are crucial for global monitoring of trouble spots around the world. So when those go down, I'm telling y'all, they're making sure that all of their critical infrastructure and their critical and essential installations are all shielded and protected. They're not connecting to these Wi-Fi and these silly little satellites that they drift up there. That's for the cities, because that can go down. That's vulnerable. I'm just gonna skip through here. They talk about some hypotheticals, but there's an interesting another scenario here. Here's a hypothetical. Right over. Ooh, what do you see right there? They offer up this guidance. See, you know, they did all of these EMP tests and they tested all of these things, you know, a long time ago. And then they went and they got themselves into vulnerable positions, so now they have to correct that by hardening, right? There's your installation, there's your critical infrastructure, critical installation, essential installation right there with shielded walls. Everything is shielded. Penetration, circumferential bonding, shielded door with tight metal gasket seal, entranceway waveguide. I mean, it's completely shielded. They're not going to be using Wi-Fi because there's no Wi-Fi that's going to be able to penetrate their shielding. They're going to be on the hard lines. Why the civvies go down. Just one more thing here real quick. I wanted to find the one that there was a map that showed over Guam to right there maybe. Yeah. Hardening against hemp. Yeah. They're getting themselves on the hard lines. And they're getting themselves shielded. They're getting themselves protected. So that when they pop it off, the only ones going down are the civvies. There's your satellite in space. Upset. Degradation. I mean, it's very clear to me anyway. Cell phones, risk to the towers. To me, it's just too obvious. It's just way too obvious.
will make us no longer second in space and in size. It lays the predicate and the foundation for a space communication satellite that will permit the people of the world to see one television program at the same time throughout the world. Think about that kind of communication, and think about the opportunity that will provide. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer, and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the